So thank you so much for hopping on to the podcast. I really appreciate you joining me today. I know we spoke a few weeks ago, and I have been really excited to do this podcast with you, just to dig in a bit deeper and just get to know you more, share, your story and your journey with the audience. And so with that, let's just go ahead and get into a little bit of your background and, how you started this journey.
So I am a first generation Latina lawyer. So I was the first generation born in the US. My parents are from the Dominican Republic. And so I had gone to law school, did the big law thing, went in-house, did litigation and compliance in-house. I also was an HR leader, so human resources leader, focusing on leadership development and executive coaching. And during that time that I was on the legal side of the house, I got certified in coaching, because I felt this pull to serve and to help women in a way where I have more frameworks, I had more tools to do that, because I'd always done that throughout my career, giving back and mentoring others, but I wanted another level of how I could help. And also I experienced the power of coaching, and it helped me through multiple different things that happened in my life. And so I knew the power of it, I knew how impactful it could be, and I wanted to do that for others. And so I became a women's life and high performance coach, and high performance is really about how do I sustain joy and success as I define success in all the areas of my life over the long term. So it's not just about career success, it's about personal success and what that really means to you, and how do you reach for that, and how do you achieve that, essentially. And I also became a speaker, and I am a mom of 3, so I peppered 3 kids in there in that journey along the way. And I have a podcast called the Humble Rising Podcast, which I started about 3 years ago as well. And I mostly coach right now. I went full-time into my business in March. So I left my corporate job, went full-time into my business, and I coach mainly first generation and women of color professionals at personal or professional inflection points or crossroads. And so what they really get is a lot more clarity, a lot more confidence in terms of how they make decisions, why they make certain decisions, and confidence in the direction they're headed in. And through that, you get bold and you get more courageous as you go through that process.
I think that's really awesome, how the transition from corporate into a corporate lawyer into coaching. So how did that transition happen? Or you're probably still in that phase of transition.
Yes. So Nicole, I transitioned from, and this may be important for people to understand, that it wasn't a massive, massive leap. It was more like little leaps. So I went from law firm to in-house, and I had different roles in the legal compliance group. Like my role expanded, or I shifted to something different. So I had a couple of role shifts there. And then I shifted into HR. And at first I did employee relations. And that's where I really learned a lot about HR. I really partnered with people, collaborated with people, understood the lay of the land, and then transitioned into leadership development and running and enhancing our executive coaching program. So it was at that point when I had the job that I said, this is the job I want. I want leadership development. I want executive coaching. I want to enhance our program. I want to implement new programs, especially group coaching programs. It's when they gave me that opportunity, and I was in that role for 2 years, that I was like, oh, they're never going to be able to give me a role that's going to light me up the way that coaching and speaking light me up on the inside full time. I knew that because I had been speaking and coaching, and I'm like, there's something about this that I need to make a wider, broader impact, right? I was aligned with myself at that job, but I knew there was more. And it is when I had what I consider to be I had a great job, a dream job. I worked with great people, and it wasn't enough. And it wasn't about that job or that company. It was about me, that I wanted to be a fuller expression of myself. And I wasn't doing it. And I knew that. And I knew I was playing smaller than I feel like God wanted me to play. And that's really what I will say, that is what was the real impetus for the transition to full-time entrepreneurship. It was that the calling got so loud that I really couldn't ignore it. I also initially was like, okay, I'm gonna give it a year. This calling got really, really loud. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna give it a year. And literally 2 months later, I was giving my notice because it was too strong and I couldn't ignore it. And I had had that voice before. And the voice that I feel, like that calling that I feel, one, I always listen to it because it has served me in the past. But it gets really annoying when you don't listen to it and it gets really loud. And I just felt like this is the moment. It's the moment. And if I don't do this, I won't be in full alignment and that will kill me on the inside.
Yeah, I can understand what you're saying, because when you mention like the calling and having that feeling of I need to go in this direction, I'm here right now, but I know for sure I need to move in a different direction. And you're going to be pushed there and pulled there no matter what. And it's very strong and it's hard to ignore, and you can't really ignore it. And if you want to stay in alignment with yourself and your purpose from God, you have to move in that direction.
Yes.
So what was that like for you? You know, when you're being pulled in that direction and you're not really wanting to, you know, you're not going to be happy where you are, and you want to make sure that you are in alignment with your purpose. How does that continue to push you in that direction? Or what is that feeling that you have? And just making sure that you do, you know, you stay in alignment with your purpose for God. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes. No, so part of it is deep reflection and introspection, right? Part of it is I had to figure out at first whether the calling that I was feeling really like deeply, like in my body, like I felt it every single day, eventually felt it every single day. At first, it was something that it was like a tap. Toot. So I know you think this job is the thing for you, but guess what? It's not. And then another one, toot, tap on the shoulder, and then a whisper, hey, remember what I said before about this not being the thing? Yeah, I'm here to remind you. And then the tapping was every day. And then I'm like, okay, I get it. And then again, that process of deep reflection of like, what is this voice trying to tell me? Like, I know it's telling me this is not it. Is it telling me though really to go for full-time entrepreneurship? Because that I've never done. And that's scary as all, you know what, right? Like, is that what I need to do? Or do I shift somewhere else? But no, it was very, very clear after, you know, I'm a big journaler and I also do verbal processing too. And it was very clear to me that no, what I need to be doing is my own thing, because I need to have the authority. I need to have the power to do what I want to do, how I want to do it. Instead of, you know, whatever you're in an organization, you're reporting to someone has to approve of what you're doing. Unless you're the board of directors of that, if it's a public company, you know, if it's publicly traded, you have a board. Like in my case, my company was publicly traded. So there's a board and they tell the CEO what to do. And she's telling everybody else what to do. So you're never able to kind of like do what you know from data is what should be done and what people really need. You're not always able to do that. Could be because of resources. It could be a whole host of issues. But I needed to step out on my own to really have the impact I wanted to make, which was not going to be possible in any company, because it's still a limited number of people you can impact, right? I didn't want the limitation anymore. I wanted more freedom to have that impact in the way that I thought I wanted to have it and how I knew I was called to have it, right? So it starts like a little voice, little whisper, and then it gets more consistent, and then it gets louder, and then you feel it more in your body, to the point where I would go into work, because we were hybrid, I would go into the office. Every time I'd walk in, I'd be like, this doesn't feel right. Like, I love the people I work with, and it didn't feel right. I'm like, I should be doing something else. And I also, Nicole, you asked me this, so this is interesting. There were points, maybe like 5 or 6 months before I gave my notice, which was actually really hard to give. Like, I cried a lot when I gave my notice because I really love the people. But there was a point, 5 to 6 months, starting 5 to 6 months before I gave my notice and I left, where I'd be in meetings, like our leadership team meetings, I'd be in meetings. And I would look around the room and I'd be like, oh, that person could totally take over this project that I have. That person, this other person could totally do this other thing that I'm working on. And this person can take over for that project. Like I started seeing my work being handed to other people and believing that everything would be okay if I had left. Mm-hmm. So I started visualizing that as well. Like this team is going to be fine. These people who it may not be work that's at their level yet, they're going to rise to the occasion and be able to do it. And I know that. And me leaving is going to give them that opportunity. Like I kept thinking like that too in meetings, and that became all the time. And then I would bring people into my projects to keep them aware of things. Just like, I think unconsciously doing that a little bit, and then a little bit intentionally being like, hey, I think this may end up in your lap and I want you to be a part of it before it does or does not end up there, because I'm going to leave, even though no one knew that until I get my notice.
And that speaks a lot to your integrity also, like being in a position where you have a lot of different projects going on and like not really wanting to leave because you're not sure about how these projects will continue on with you, and to kind of see that vision of like, wait a minute, things can still go on without me. I can still leave this in, the right hands of this person and that person and be okay with the outcome of that situation. So that definitely speaks a lot to just who you are and your character, for sure.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, because when you feel like you have a good team and your peers, like you feel good about those relationships, you want to make sure that when you leave it in a good place. So I actually gave, I think, more than a month worth of notice. And before I did that, I had friends who, not at my job, but friends who were like, ooh, are you sure you want to do that? Because it was right, I would be giving notice. I was giving notice before bonus came out, like right before they came out. And I was eligible for it. And so technically they could have said, oh, you gave your notice, it's 2 weeks and you don't get a bonus because you could end before that time. And I remember saying they would not do that to me. And I had been there for 8 years, Nicole. I had been through different groups. Like I felt really well established and connected. And I was like, they wouldn't do that. They do the right thing. Like I've seen them do the right thing over and over. They wouldn't do that. And then when I finally told my manager, right, I said, hey, do you think they would like do that to me? And she goes, absolutely not. And no, they did not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. They did. You're like, oh, you're waiting for it. Oh, no. No, I got my bonus. Everything was fine. And I was able to transition everything in a way that had people feeling really good when I left. And even when I said, hey, if you can't find something or something comes up and I just missed it, like I didn't think to share it with someone because I just wasn't thinking about it, please text me. And I remember one of the other women on the leadership team said, Eddie V, we can figure it out. It's gonna be fine. You go do your thing. We can't figure that out. She goes, that's a problem. I'm like, okay. So yeah, I do think it's important for people. And it's not about not burning bridges or burning bridges. It's really about caring about your reputation. And you may be replaceable, but your work and I think your impact and your contribution, I don't think that's replaceable.
And you talked about like how you journal a lot and you have a lot of self-reflection and awareness. That's absolutely great to have, right? Like, and to be able to step out on faith, to think about the taps that you were receiving from God and knowing that you needed to go in a different direction. When you did finally put in that notice and make that decision to go full forward in your own business, because you could have also taken the leap to just go on yourself as a lawyer. But instead, you chose to help women in leadership and coaching, and jumping into that and just stepping out on faith in that way. How has that been for you? Like, I know it's very new still, but how has it kind of been since then?
I will say that at first, I felt like I was going through like corporate detox. I felt like my brain was so accustomed to going 5,000 miles per hour. And so was my body, because, right, like I have 3 kids. I was running the full-time business I have right now. I was running that on the side, right? And then have my full-time job, at that time. So I was so used to going, doing. And that was my entire career. You go to a law firm, you can bill 60-hour weeks and then the like god awful 80-hour week. That is not uncommon. And you're used to working, producing, performing, working, producing, performing, being available, being accessible, being responsive. You are constantly inundated with inputs and people who need something from you. An email comes through, is someone needing something from you. And it took me, I'm gonna say, I think only until very recently, maybe the last 3 weeks, have I felt like I've gotten to the tail end of that detox, where I feel less cortisol in my body, less adrenaline in that way. And I'm more probably with the flow, meaning it's not, and I say this because this is something that I realized maybe a month after I left. I didn't recognize how important it was for me to feel validated through being needed, through emails, and through Microsoft Teams messages. Like, I didn't realize how much validation it gave me. And it's not that it's different. It's different from like needing someone to affirm you at all times, needing someone to validate your work at all times. This is different. This is something that seems so insignificant, but when you go full-time entrepreneurship and you're not inundated with the team, people, colleagues messaging you and emailing you with things and for things and deadlines and presentations and this and that, you miss that. And you realize, oh, I don't just miss the people, I miss how that made me feel to be needed in that way. So on the one hand, no one wants to be accessible all the time. And I certainly wasn't accessible 24/7 like I had been before as a lawyer. But there was still a constant barrage of messages and emails that I had gotten used to. And it made me feel important. Like, that made me feel special. And so when you don't have that constant barrage in that same way, where things are way more intentional now, right? Like, it's a different beast when you're a full-time entrepreneur. It felt a little different. And I realized that, oh, this is like where all the resistance comes, right? You feel like, you're trying to further your business, like move it forward in a way that you weren't able to do before because you had another full-time job. But now I have all of this opportunity. Now I can actually put myself out there as like, this is what I do now all the time. And that opportunity was petrifying. Like, it's great. It's amazing. It's what I wanted to do, right? It's what I'm supposed to do. And it's terrifying at the same time because I've never done it. And people often say to me, like even people that I coach who are lawyers who may want to leave the law, they're like, I don't know what else I would do. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you have so many transferable skills. But the truth is that if you do something like this, like you don't want to start your own law firm, you want to do something like not in that legal space. The truth is that you have to learn a new set of skills. You have to learn sales. You have to learn marketing. You have to learn how to do market research. Because one-on-one coaching is very different from like I'm going to launch a group coaching program for women. That's different. Those are two different things, right? And learning how to do that, I built group coaching programs in corporate, but it wasn't my own, right? It wasn't my baby. This is like a baby that I'm giving to people as a gift, right? It feels different. And what the number one thing I've had to face and navigate is this, and my coach, she called it secret shame. And I love that phrase. That's exactly what it feels like. It's the secret shame of like, oh my gosh, I was so good at these other things. And I'm not good at like the marketing, the sales, all the parts of the business that you have to deal with when you're running your own business. I am not good at that yet. And that to me causes shame, because you could be so good at this other thing, but you haven't learned how to do this yet that you're walking into, right? And she often talks about this. My coach will say, you can be a great coach, a great speaker. You can be fantastic at those things and have no business because you don't know how to run your business. And no, I don't. I'm learning how to run a business. And that has been so humbling, Nicole, to say the least. It's been really humbling. And it has also really challenged like my growth mindset. It has really challenged it. Yeah. In a really good way. Like I feel like I'm learning a lot and I am leaning into it instead of being afraid of it. But that has been something that's very real that I've been navigating.
Yeah, it's a different like ball game, really. Like
Totally.
I also have the legal world, definitely not a lawyer, but as a paralegal in, in that space. And I transitioned from that into marketing. And so it was also, I know this aspect of things, when it comes to legal, but then moving things over into just marketing where I love that aspect of it, but it took a lot of growing pains and it was like a start from like the bottom type of thing and working my way up and just learning different aspects. So I understand exactly what you're saying, like having this skill set where it's like, I'm so good at this and now I'm transitioning and it's different. I like it, but I'm not as good as I was, in the beginning. So yeah, definitely understand that for sure.
Yeah, and you're right, though. It's the bottom. Like you said, that's exactly it. It's that I felt like in many ways I was at the top of that game when I left, meaning I had hit a point where I didn't want to get another promotion. I was good there, right? And I was senior enough where I had enough autonomy. Not like, obviously, like I said before, you don't get full autonomy because no one does unless you're at the board level. And even then they're shareholders. So it still goes on. But it's that you were at the top or seemingly somewhat at the top, right? And then although you have this skill set, there's this other skill set that makes you feel like you're at the bottom. And you've worked so hard to get to the top of that other one, of that other mountain. And now you're like hanging out at the bottom, going around and around at the bottom. And you're like, oh gosh, this mountain I'm about to climb, it is really, really high. And it's gonna be a journey that's uncertain. And that's it. It's you phrased it really well. It's that you like have to start from the bottom essentially.
Yeah.
When you've already achieved so much on the other side, right? Like,
yeah. And so then how is that for you? Because I know like in the coaching space as well, there are coaches who, I'm going to put it in air quotes, that it seemingly looks like they have it all together, right? Like it's like their marketing looks like it's all together. They're posting on social all the time. Their emails are going out like clockwork. And so have you had any of that? I know like in the industry, they call it imposter syndrome of like where I am and like what it looks like on, what others are doing. Has that come across you at all?
I definitely find myself comparing. I do it too. I'm like human, right? Like comparing the image of something to my reality and feeling, I have had thoughts of like, oh, why can't I be further along? Like, why can't I be further along in my business? Like in the branding, in the marketing, and oh, that post was so good. It gets right at what her ideal client is probably struggling with. Like, oh, why can't I be that good at it? And it's because I haven't practiced marketing enough. Like I have not been in practice. And so when it comes to imposter syndrome, like I have such like a tortured relationship with that phrase because one, the history of like how it came to be, but two, meaning the research that produced that phrase. But I feel like we use it as a crutch sometimes, like, oh, there's something wrong with us. And I'm like, no, there's nothing wrong with us. We're in a situation where there's some discomfort because we're learning something new or we're in a new environment. So it feels unfamiliar. And guess what? Every single person, right? Every single person's brain goes into threat mode when there's something unfamiliar. So it's not crazy that we would feel, or I would feel like, oh shoot, oh gosh, I have never been here before. My brain is like, yeah, that's why we want to do this other thing, because now this is getting too uncertain and I don't like uncertainty. I like predictability. I like what's familiar. I like comfort. I like routine. I like what we did before. Why are you trying to change it up? I don't like change. And it's freaking out. And that to me, like knowing that, Nicole, knowing that, I always come back to like, hey, you haven't done this before. And guess what? When you were practicing as a lawyer, your first year, you know what the hell you were doing then either. Yeah. And you learned. And you learned because you practiced and you put in the time and you put in the energy and you cared about it and you built relationships with people. Same thing in entrepreneurship, right? So it's not that I don't want to diminish or minimize that feeling, because I have had it and I have it all the time. It's that I'm able to quickly get myself out of any kind of spiral and say, hey, I'm learning, I'm growing, and I'm putting in the work, and I'm putting in needle moving work. Like, I'm not doing busy work over here, right? Like, I'm super focused, I have my goals, and I'm just working a process. And I'm trusting that the work I do is gonna be enough. And honestly, I'm even though I'm still very early, super early on in my entrepreneur journey, I really believe that whatever is meant to happen for me will happen for me. And if it's not meant for me, it's not gonna happen, and I'm okay with that. Because I look at my life, even I'm 40, I look at my life and I say, look, when I'm 80, 90, hopefully I get to live that long. When I'm 80, 90, and oh my God, even if I'm on my deathbed, maybe I live to 100, I don't know. I am gonna ask myself if I took risks in my life to live into my fullest truth, right? And I get to say I tried. So even if this doesn't even work, like, I'm putting it out there, right? Even if this doesn't work as a business, because it's very different to be coaching like 3 clients at a time on the side and run it as a business and speak as a business. Like, very different to do that. You have to be open to the fact that it might not work. And you can, and I pray that it does, and I pray that I am wildly successful in the long run, but I don't know, like, God's plan, right? Sometimes he looks at our plans and he laughs and he's like, oh, you thought you were going to do it that way? No, I'm going to make you do it this way. And so I have to be open to that, and I cannot be too attached to the outcome, because if I do, that's just going to bring me a lot more suffering and pain. And so I'm in that space right now, Nicole. I'm like, I'm working the process, I'm trusting. And you know what, God, whatever you got for me, like, I'm good. Like, just like, I'm good. Like, I'm more feeling that way than anything else right now.
And that's a good way to kind of approach it, I think, is to be like, whatever God has for me, I'm okay with taking that path. Because I bet when you started, or when you even went to school to get your law degree, you didn't think that starting your first year as a professional 8 years later, that you would be transitioning into something different. That probably wasn't the plan.
No. Yeah, and it was like, so I was at a law firm. I was at 2 different ones, and I also clerked. And then I went to the company I was at more recently for 8 years. So I had been maybe 16 years ago. That was 16 years ago I graduated from law school and started my law practice. So people often say, like, I've had people, I would say 2 or 3 people since I became an entrepreneur full time have said to me, oh my gosh, but do you feel like you wasted your law degree? And I always say, absolutely not. Every single thing I've done has been a building block and a stepping stone to this very moment. Like, I believe every single interaction, experience, job, project, task, email, like, to me, every single thing has led to this. So absolutely, it's not a waste of time. I needed to go through those experiences to get here. But you're right. When what, Nicole, my first year practicing, what? I was like, I'm gonna be a partner, okay? I'm gonna be a partner, I'm gonna be a judge. Nicole, I said that, and I didn't know how to be a lawyer yet, okay? I was, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And then you live life. Yeah. And you evolve as a person, as you should. Yeah. You grow, you learn, you experience new things, you challenge your own thinking, you adopt different perspectives. And it's okay if what you wanted in a previous season of life is not what you want anymore. That's okay.
Okay. Yeah. And I love that you said, like, everything that you have done in your past, like, has been building blocks to get you where you are now. That is a word, okay? That is a word for me. Because, I'm always like, thinking of what's next? What's next? Okay, what am I supposed to be doing? Where should I be? And I shouldn't have to, I don't need to think that way, right? I just need to be okay with where I am and know that whatever God has for me, like all the things that I've experienced are going to be those building blocks. And it has been to get even me where I am at this moment.
Yes.
So,
And Nicole, I think it's okay to want more though. Like another way to look at the calling and the voice that I experienced so intensely, another way to look at that is, oh, this nudge that you're longing for more, like that this isn't it, right?
Yeah.
That's okay too, to lean into that and be like, okay, what is that more? How can I explore that? But I do think that sometimes we have to be settled, like a little bit more settled, right? And you can wonder and explore what's more. And if when I say settled, I mean, if you feel like a very, very strong pull to something else, like I think you should really, really explore that. But if it's like more of a like, hey, like what's next for me? Like where am I going next? I think that requires exploring that from a really centered and anchored place, right? Than like a chasing place, or like okay, I'm bored now, so what now? Like you're coming from a different kind of energy when you do it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I I agree. I love that. So with where you are now, what does that look like going forward? You talked about you're doing one-on-one coaching and you're soon to launch a group coaching program. So tell us more. Love to hear it.
Okay, so I do speaking engagements. I think I mentioned that, but I've always done that. So that's not really new. And I've done one-on-one coaching. I'm continuing to do that. And this group coaching program, I don't know if I'm going to call it, I've been calling it a women's empowerment mastermind. But I don't know if that's what the official title will be, but it will be a 3 to 6 month group coaching program for like accomplished, high achieving professional women who are really looking to reset. And when I say reset, I mean, we're going to work through basically my coaching framework and my process that I use with one-on-ones. We're going to do it in a group setting where you also get additional resources. You get each other as peer support, which a lot of women I spoke to in my market research for the program, they felt like they wanted more of a community, like they wanted more connection with other women similarly situated to them and like-minded, to bounce ideas off of each other and to share insights and perspectives, not just what I teach, but also them sharing with each other, and they can keep each other accountable just as much as I can, but there's really a power in that group dynamic. And part of that is I love all the group coaching programs I've been in. I think it's really powerful when you build connections with other women, and we just cannot overstate the importance of community, especially when you're going through something really challenging. So a lot of the women I talk to are starved for time. They feel like they don't have enough time to take care of themselves, enough time to take care of all the things at work and all the things at home and all the things that they have to do. And they really struggle with prioritizing things. And they feel like, hey, I have this to-do list. I have all these things I have to do. And I feel like I do one thing and then 10 more things get added. And I feel like I'm losing control. And when you ask them, because I did, oh, so what's the cost to you of not fixing this problem, like not addressing this challenge you have? And they all say the same thing. They're like, my happiness, my well-being, and my life. Because I am drowning. It's like you're drowning in your to-dos, and you're drowning in the expectations of others, and you're drowning in perfectionism, right? Because we can't do it. We just can't do it. We have to do it the way that we need to do it according to this very high standard we have. But the problem is that a lot of us are not operating from realistic, fair expectations, right? And so the group coaching program really will hit home on that point of how do I go from really overwhelmed, starved for time, and how do I step into a reality and really start living a reality that is more aligned with how I really want to live my life, because I'm doing all of this work to understand the kind of life I really want to live. And how do I do that with what I have right now, right? I don't subscribe. I know some people do, but I just don't subscribe to if there's an issue with energy and time management at work, or like things are not right at work, I'm not the coach you go to be like, okay, I want to leave or I want to stay. I'm not a stay or leave job kind of person. I think it's so much grayer than that. And I think there's so much more to explore before you say, this situation isn't working for me, I want to leave. Because I'm always going to come back to, okay, what are the facts of the situation and what's within your sphere of control? Like, what do you have the power to change? What do you have the full authority to change? Have you addressed those things? And Nicole, I'll tell you, 100% of the time, women haven't done those things yet. Right? So they haven't been able to see a different result because they haven't tried something different, truly different. Because creating new habits and creating a different mindset takes time, and it takes energy, and it takes attention and focus. So the group coaching program really takes women through that journey, and they go through it together, and also guided by me. So I'm super excited about it. And one of the reasons why I'm most excited about it is because of my conversations with women when I was doing the market research for the program. I was like, oh, like you're all saying the same thing. Like, this is great. Like, this is great because now we have a common language. And so when we go through the program, we're all going to be on a similar page. We all have different personal situations, but the challenges are the same. They're not different. They may look different for each person, but at the core, they're the same. And so I'm really excited about that. That goes, enrollment opens soon, but it goes live in September. Like, we have our first, session in September. And part of that is to get you through to December, right? That's why it's going to be that long. And so I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I'm excited for you. And this is a virtual group, right? Where are you located, by the way?
Boston. I'm in Boston area.
Okay, yeah. So it's a virtual group. You don't have to be local to Boston or...
No, it's all virtual. But, and I'll just be honest about this, I love in-person stuff. Like, I love in-person events, especially when it's with like your people. I love that stuff. And I've been thinking about this because when I designed the program, right now it's all virtual, but I'm thinking, like, could we do something where if people can make it, we do something in person in Boston to either end it or begin it, or in the middle, like something in person. Because I do feel like in-person conversations are different, because you can read energy better and you can build stronger connections, I think, more quickly. And in a group coaching setting, you have to build trust and safety very quickly in the beginning, or like it doesn't work. People need to be able to share and feel like it's a safe container. And I've been thinking about that, like, oh, do I add an in-person element? And if I do, I have to do that now, because people would need to know, if they sign up, if they're not close by, and if they can't travel, they'd be missing out on that, which would be a critical component to it.
Yeah, I love your energy, and I know that like I can feel it, that an in-person aspect would be amazing for sure.
Yeah. And then Nicole, I also have my book coming out in January.
Yes. Oh yeah, we didn't get to talk about the book. That's right. Yeah. So talk to us about the book that you have coming.
So the book, and we haven't talked about it much because I'm not in the height of marketing for it, right? We just selected the final cover. I just approved the page design. There are all these steps to a book that I never knew until I started going through it. But the book is called Your Time to Rise. And the subtitle is Unlearn Limiting Beliefs, Unlock Your Power, Unleash Your Truest Self. And it is partly my coaching framework. We spent a lot of time on how to really shift your mindset and address the beliefs that tend to hold us back from doing the things that we really want to do and really need to do for ourselves. And how do you create that North Star for who you want to be and what you want to do with your life? It's a book that is for everyone, but I wrote it I wrote it specifically for women of color, and specifically for women of color who are mothers. Like when I was writing the book, that's who I was talking to. And so I think you'll see in the sleeve or whatever, I forget what they call it, all these terms that I had to learn. You'll see that that's the target audience in the book. And that was really important to me because while I think some people can benefit from it, absolutely, it is for the person I wrote it for.
Yeah. No, I'm excited. I'm excited for your group coaching program. I'm excited for the launch of your new business and you transitioning from corporate into doing your own thing. I'm excited for the book. And I think just you are just a wonderful person. So I'm just excited for you in your journey as well. So Adi V.
Yes, girl. Yes.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time and also doing the reschedule for me because last week was crazy. But
thank you. No, thank you so much. I so appreciate your time and rescheduling. No problem. I get it. Look, stuff happens. No problem.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And we'll definitely leave some links below on the podcast page here and also on the website for those to connect with you. And so if you could share your links, that would be awesome.
So you can reach me on LinkedIn, Arivi Vargas. So Arivee. Vargas is the last name, Vargas. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. Same deal. It's just my name. Or you can go to my website, arivivargas.com.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Nicole.